I'm here with Kier Atherton. He is the director of Out to Pasture. He's a filmmaker from Trigo. And yeah, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So we are leading up to the Kalispell premiere of this film. But you're a local filmmaker, and you've made other films before, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about, before we jump into Out to Pasture, I was just kind of curious about the last project you did.
Okay, well, I've been working a lot more as a cinematographer, so the most recent release that I worked on was Bring Them Home, which premiered at the Wackold Center here and will be at Winterland Festival, I think, opening night coming up in Whitefish at the end of the month. But as far as, directing, it takes a lot more time and money to get in a director's chair. So the last film I did was Love Like Gold, which was produced by Eureka friend Sky Bennett quite a few years back now. But that was my kind of jump into the filmmaking saddle.
Cool.
Trial by fire.
How did you get into filmmaking?
The long, slow, difficult way, I guess. I knew it's what I wanted to do, and thankfully I got a little exposure in college, and I went to Missoula, and there's a philosophy professor, Sean O'Brien, that taught kind of like some unsanctioned film classes. Mm-hmm. So we went on some documentary trips to, Churchill, Manitoba with Chuck Jonko, and then the Galapagos Islands. Okay. So I had enough hands-on experience to realize that was my favorite kind of storytelling, and I like documentary because it's so immediate. Yeah. The problem with narrative filmmaking is it's very imaginary for a very long time. It's a lot of this is really going to happen, and you say it for a few years, and people stop believing you. So I love documentary because you actually go somewhere, you meet the people. So I knew I liked that, but I spent some time doing music and worked for the Forest Service for a long time. So at some point I upgraded. I don't know if it's an upgrade, but swapped out the chainsaw for a camera.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Big change, huh?
I mean, it's a big change, but you have to point in the right direction.
Yeah.
So, not as big as you would think.
So, how did the idea for this film come to be, for Out to Pasture? How'd you come with that?
So, Out to Pasture was really inspired by a Parisian friend, Théo Trifard. Mm-hmm. I like to say, you can't pick your muse, unfortunately. So, my muse is of a French theatrical actor, Théo, and we worked together on Love Like Gold, but we met on a theater production in Marseille where I was working on the music, and he was an actor. And back then, I just loved his physical presence. He was kind of a butler in the movie, and just the way he would move was very inspiring, and he was the most encouraging voice when there wasn't another encouraging voice before I did the first film. And then he was just huge in production. He came back for the premiere of that in Missoula and everything. So he's become a very good friend, and we spent a lot of time together. And he has Parkinson's, and when he had Parkinson's, the way he moved started to get really kind of erratic, and he would move with it. And I was just inspired by the way he would move around and the way people would watch him move. So he ended up having surgery for his Parkinson's, which kind of keeps it at bay. So it felt like a good window to make a movie.
Yeah. And
I'd been working on a mafia in Montana kind of script. I was originally thinking kind of more like my childhood 90s mafia in Montana, and he was just a small character in that. At some point I realized, if you're going to make a movie, it's very hard, and you want to be with your favorite people if you can. So I ended up turning him into the lead actor, and once it was just him and kind of hiding out in a small Montana town, the script really came together. I worked with enough people in the Valley. I knew, there were really great actors to cast, like Annemarie Jones, who works with Alpine Theater Project, Mike Eldred, bringing Rob Quist in for his film debut. It's a real pleasure. There's Mikey Winn, who's a big-time actor in Whitefish. So, yeah, it all came together really fast once the concept of Théo, the actor, being out of pasture in a small Montana town, and all combined.
Yeah, we have a really great wealth of creative talent here in Northwest Montana. So a mafia movie. So what drew you to mafia stuff?
I mean, without getting too specific, it was always around.
Yeah.
But I ended up not exploring that as much. There are a few tidbits based on reality mixed in here and there. Mm-hmm. But I just Théo he's kind of Creole. So it's just really a fish out of water story. So it's someone coming from this background. And what I love about small town Montana is somehow all these very different, odd or weird people really like each other and get along. Mm-hmm. So I kind of like the concept of this guy coming to Montana, being stuck in a place he does not want to be, and then by the end of the movie kind of realizing this is where he belongs more than anywhere else he's been. I kind of want an uplifting story about being a fish out of water, but then like actually finding your community where you don't expect it.
When did you reach out to Rob specifically? Because I talked to him about this in the springtime, and he was so excited to make his movie debut.
Yeah, you know, I've had a good friendship with Rob, and when I was kind of writing the sheriff role, I was kind of thinking about people who could be perfect for the role, and then at some point Rob came into my mind, like he was already the character. And, you know, I wasn't sure what he thought about acting, but I reached out to him, and it's, you know, it was a dream of his to get into acting, and I just feel lucky that, you know, that we got him in the movie while I could still afford him. I feel like, if, you know, now that he has an acting reel, he might be, you know, hard to cast. So hopefully he'll get a lot more opportunities. He's great. And he brought the same professionalism he brings to music and everything else he does. So no matter like how late I set his call time compared to the crew, he always beat us to set. You know, I'd be like, hey Rob, we're not going to be there until 10, so don't show up until 10, and he'd be there at 8, you know, drinking coffee, meeting all the people, and he was just great.
That's funny. So where did you guys film?
So we filmed the movie all in Lincoln and Flathead County. Mm-hmm. You know, originally there was a part of the movie that would have been kind of like in Chicago where the Mafia guy's from, but at some point I realized I just wanted to spend every minute of the movie up here, pretty much. So yeah, we filmed in Trigo, we filmed in Whitefish, we filmed around. So some recognizable locations like the Trigo Pub, general store in the movie. You know, filmed some where I live because a lot of the movie is set in kind of a fictional Airbnb community.
Oh, okay.
So I live in a cabin in the woods and built a sauna in the woods for the movie and kind of created this kind of ramshackle, you know, Airbnb in the woods.
So how long did filming take?
Filming was about 5 weeks, I would say overall. We filmed a couple years ago and we really lucked out at the weather. We got, so we filmed like one really long scene in the rain. There's one day of rain, so it was a tough one because, you know, Theo and Salome, who's assistant director, were jet-lagged. Our sound man's flight got in late, but there's an actress from the Flathead back from New York City, and it was just like the perfect day to film. It was fun to film in the rain. It was tough.
Yeah.
You know, had to hold an umbrella over the camera and everything, but otherwise we just had a beautiful fall weather. So it was about 5 weeks, and because we weren't moving a lot of locations, it was not as draining as often film can be, you know. Everyone else had a good time. The director never has a good time, but as long as like the cast and crew are showing up refreshed and, you know, having a good time, you know, that's much more sustainable. Usually by the end of a film production, people are kind of at their wits' end, but we all finished strong with this one, which is good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, directing is like, compared to the other stuff that you do professionally, directing is such a unique challenge in itself. What made you want to really like go down that route? Just having control over the story, or?
Oh, that's a good question. Directing. I mean, there's certain stories that, you know, if you create them, it's nice to tell them. I think in a way, I don't have a better origin story for that. I mean, I think honestly, I got very discouraged for a lot of years because there's so much content. You know, especially like in 2020 when there's finally time to watch everything, and I just couldn't catch up. And I gave up. So there's like so much stuff everywhere. You're like, what's even the point of making something? You know, the distribution channels are blocked. Like people have too much stuff to watch. But at some point, I kind of realized that all this stuff coming in is kind of like junk food. Most of it. It's like going to the cereal aisle and there's 100 cereals, shiny packaging. It's like, oh, there's all the cereal I could ever need, but do you actually get nutrients from any of them? So at some point, I realized I wanted to tell more of a local story with the heart. And I mean, we'll see how audiences get to it, but it's like local food, you know. It might not be the shiniest. It might look a little funny around the edges, but hopefully it's better for the soul, or more nutritious is the goal.
I could definitely see, I mean, from someone who moved up here, you know, and has lived here for a few years, compared to someone who's lived here their whole lives, like, everyone wants to show this place off a little bit, you know, but especially with, like, your community up in Trigo. Do you draw like a lot of inspiration from the places up there?
Yeah, I would say the movie doesn't show the place off in the normal way. You know, I'm kind of inspired by like not having a good tourist experience. It makes sense because I've had that, you know, I've stayed for work at different Airbnbs and a lot of them are pretty bad. Yeah. A lot of them are really good. So, and it's a character who doesn't want to be here. You know, he's planning on retiring on the beach in Cuba. he gets stuck here. It's in the fall, the weather's not great. He's not dressed for it, he's not looking for it. So it's much more inspired by, I guess, kind of how the community comes together in places like that, you know. But the place he's staying is in the woods, like the views aren't great, it's a lot of blowdown. Mm-hmm. So it's not showing off in a way that would get a film grant, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, showing off the beauty of Montana, you know, it's not that. It's more kind of someone having the bad tourist experience, but then actually finding that they love the people here, for most of them.
Yeah, yeah.
Or they're accepted for who they are in an unexpected way.
Rob mentioned it premiered in Paris. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's really cool. Is that the first time something like that has happened to you? Like where your film premieres?
Yeah, that is the first time. It was
really
natural
cool
for this film to do a Paris premiere because there are actors from there.
Yeah.
So that was exciting. I mean, I have a newborn son, so I wasn't there. It would have been fun to kind of pack up everyone's bags and go over there, but it was just, you know, at least the movie can travel. It's my attitude.
Yeah.
They don't really need to hear what I have to say about it. Hopefully the movie speaks for itself at some level.
Yeah. Did Théo tell you much about like how that went over there?
Yeah. You know, it sounded like people laughed at the right times in the movie. People were uplifted. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
It's nice. I mean, there's some industry people there, so like there's one technical thing that was kind of an aesthetic choice, but I kind of changed that. Yeah, I mean, at the end we want to get the movie in front of as many people as possible, but our start is focusing, you know, where we know we have an audience, you know, where the cast is from.
Maybe could you just kind of walk us through like the setup of the film?
Okay, so the main setup for the film, which happens pretty early in the film, is that you know, mafia hitman who's Creole, so he's pretty unique for a mafia hitman, and he uses a shark tooth as his method of hits, so he has like a really big shark tooth that he uses right there. So he's doing his last job, and he's planning on going to Montana, doing the job, and then retiring to Cuba, you know, after the hit. And things go wrong. You know, he's kind of set up here. He realizes like the whole plan was going to be a setup. You know, there wasn't any out to pasture in Cuba for him. So he ends up, he doesn't have his money, doesn't have anything. He takes a very bad kind of like Uber ride and ends up, you know, at this almost an A-frame in the woods. And he gets in this tiny house community, and he kind of like works his way around there and starts kind of enjoying himself. That makes sense. And I don't want to spoil too much beyond that, but yeah, the whole setup is a mafia hitman. He gets kind of stranded in a small Montana town and doesn't have any money, anywhere to go. I guess, I mean, the thing I would like to say, and like, kind of like I said earlier about like local filmmaking and kind of think about like local food is, I mean, this area has a really huge wealth of talent. I mean, I was looking at the best of the Flathead, and I was looking at like the best of the Flathead musicians. I was like, that's a tough category, you know, musicians, but in film, and like I'm working in Kalispell at a new stop motion studio, the Sisters Bloom. They're working on a short film about regenerative agriculture. You know, it's eco-conscious stop motion. So it's something very unique in the world of stop motion, which is wonderful. You know, there's talented people I work with, you know, in Whitefish, like Morgan Delaney and Adam Pittman. And all these like great theater actors, you know, coming through the programs in the area. It's really exciting. So I'm happy to present a film that's pretty homegrown. You know, it's a lot of local talent up on screen, local locations. And I hope the wave of the future is more kind of like independent film, because that was kind of, it was the dream for a while that would happen, and like film's gotten so much more corporate, and then there's kind of YouTubing kind of stuff, but I think film's a wonderful medium. I still like, you know, a movie theater with strangers, hopefully laughing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to share that here. After my first movie premiere, those lights went off, and I was just hitting myself for not making a comedy. So this is my redemption movie.
Out to Pasture is going to premiere this Sunday in Whitefish at the Whitefish Performing Arts Center. Thanks so much, Kier, for being here. It's awesome.
Thanks so much for having me. Enjoyed it.